And we're back for another exciting episode of the Creators Collective. And this is going to be a truly interesting one, as Will is not with us today. He is out on a boat on vacation and would not deign to bow himself down to being on our podcast today. That and cell service out on the water isn't as good. So, and on top of that, this is an auspicious occasion because our very own ZH Fabrications just hit 100,000 subscribers.
I did 100,000 subscribers yesterday.
That was awesome, man.
Pretty amazing. Now I can retire. I'm done. I quit everything. Just gonna live off the royalties.
I was thinking about it. I started following you back when you were like 5,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. It's pretty strange. I feel like that's like, at least for me, I'm like that's kind of like the only reasonable number that like I've been waiting to hit. Because I feel like from then on, it's like what, like the next like milestone's like what, 500,000 or a million. Like that's probably never going to happen. So as far as I'm concerned, like I can, not that I've ever really had a huge emphasis on my numbers, but like I feel like I've made it. I'm like,
you've had really steady growth the last year or so. Just
it hasn't been fast. So like the first year I started, it was like explosive growth. It was really, really big, really fast. And then
especially with that sconce.
Yeah. And then my projects actually, I feel like as soon as my projects started getting more like, I don't want to say advanced, but like less beginner friendly, my growth really, it went from like exponential growth to just like slow and steady. And I've been slow and steady for the past year, but I'm happier doing those more demanding projects than when I started, I was a beginner. So I was doing beginner projects. So yeah.
You're not a beginner project channel.
No. Well, my old stuff is.
Yeah.
I think I have a video of me making like coasters like out of popsicle sticks and hot glue. So, nice. You know, like there's certainly some beginner-y stuff on there, but yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to, I guess, to be to the point to where I can pretty much whatever I'm inspired to build, that's what I build. So that keeps it fun for me, even though it's not necessarily the best recipe for social media success. But yeah, and also thanks to everybody that I noticed. So like the day before, a picture of my YouTube at like 99.7, and then like a couple hours later, like Jimmy DeResta, Paul Jackman, all these heavy hitters like reposted my stuff, and John Malecki, everybody on their Instagram. So shout out to everybody who further I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
Push you over the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So, yeah, and that was, I think, a big catalyst for that was also the new video that I put out. I put out a, believe it or not, everybody, I put out a video that has epoxy in it, but it's not a table. Not a table. Stabilized wood and epoxy file handles.
Yeah, river handles.
River handles. I should have done that. Epoxy river tool handles. That would have been a better deal. But the video is doing really well, and I honestly think it's just because it has the word epoxy in it, which is kind of cringe at that. But
yeah, they're really sweet handles. I was drooling over those myself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, what else you got going on?
I think that's pretty much it. I'm kind of just taking a break for a week.
How's that engraving and chasing?
It's hard. It is really, really hard. It's frustratingly hard. Like I'm pretty patient when I'm learning new stuff because I'm always excited about it. And I can only spend like 10 minutes at a time because I just get the frustration builds up and I don't want to I don't want to let it get to me. So
have you gotten into magnification yet?
No. It looks bad enough without magnifying it, so no.
That's always the thing with it is every time you think it's starting to look good, then you get into magnification. It's like,
no, it looks terrible without magnification, so that's never going to happen. So I can do lines and stuff. So half of it is just, so I forged a You know what's weird too is they call them like, because you type in engraving or like engravers and you get like the, the electric ones.
Yeah.
So, but if you type in gravers
Yeah.
without the en, I don't know what the n signifies, but like apparently they're just known as gravers, which
Yeah.
is
It's
weird
whole.
because I've never heard of that before until recently. Anyway, so there's a lot of I'm learning a lot because there's a lot of geometry. Like you have to have the geometry just right on everything, the angles. Otherwise, I didn't realize that you have to have like a heel, like a 15-degree heel on the bottom of the thing. Otherwise, you're just
Diving
digging
in.
in, and so it's one of those things that you certainly just have to learn by doing and failing and doing and failing and doing and failing. And I'm learning, but yeah, it's certainly tricky. The issue I have is trying to do circles. I feel like that's the hardest thing to chisel because, I mean, when you hit something with a hammer, it goes in a straight line for a very small distance. And trying to make a circle by doing that, it's very difficult. It's really easy because if
Yeah.
you hit too hard once, then you'll go a little bit outside of the circle, or if you hit too soft, you'll start moving on the inside of the circle. And unfortunately, people are like, I feel like the thing that human beings are best at is spotting imperfect circles. Like the thing that human beings are the best at. So you screwed up like one or two hits and is
Yeah.
it glaringly obvious? Is that the right word?
See, I
Glaringly?
can do spirals or French curves and that type of thing, but a circle or a straight line just is so obvious that there's problems.
Yeah, it's really tricky. So I'm getting better, but I can only go about 10 minutes at a time before I say, "Okay, that's enough. I need to reconcile and come back later." But I've been really lazy this past week. I don't know if it's cuz like I mean it's not really a better term. I usually
You hit
try and find
100,000 and lay back for a little while.
yeah, I usually try and find some sort of like better word to describe it, but there's no excuse. I have been lazy. I put out my video and it's I think part of it is because it's still like 100 degrees every day here. It's like 90, it's been like 95, 96 degrees here. It's almost October. Uh, I'm sick. I'm sick of working in the heat. I can't take it mentally anymore. I need to just wait. I mean, seriously, physically, like I can do it. I just mentally, I don't want. It's so hard for me to get out there, and especially since I'm excited about forging stuff. Like that's what I want to do. I want to go out there and fire up my
Yeah,
forge
fun in the
and
heat.
yeah, and I mentally can't bring myself to do it anymore. It's
And then
still
there's me. I've got a race this weekend, and it's looking like 35 degrees overnight.
wow. I just need a break from the heat. It's really bad. Hopefully hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll get back down into the 80s. And at night
Down into
it's
the
been like
80s.
78, 79 degrees is as cool as it's been getting at night.
Oh,
So it's
yuck.
just like there's no like our house the other day, like our house was at 77 degrees because our AC can't keep up with the heat outside. And it's almost October. So
Oh,
anyway, stop ranting.
if the
But
water outside is liquid, it's too hot for me.
yeah, I'm kind of with you. But yeah, so just kind of been taking a light week. I think I'm going to start planning some stuff. So I have some good news. I'm working with Chili Forge.
Oh, cool.
Anybody in the blacksmithing community is probably familiar with them. They make. I did my research, and I'm sure there's a lot of other good manufacturers out there. But from my own opinion, after looking into the stuff, I think that the forges they make are best suited for the work that I plan on doing. So I should be getting one of those next week, and then yeah, got a few hammers. I'm gonna hopefully forge next week, and just kind of taking a light week and planning things out for the future. So yeah, what about you?
Sean K in the chat says the human species will not be remembered for creating tall buildings or curing diseases or going to the moon. It'll be remembered for hating imperfect circles.
It's true.
Yeah. Well,
Very
for
true.
me, I've actually been I finished up the turning saw, which has been the live video series I've done for the last 2 months or so. I've been actually making the turning saw and detailing every step live, so you can actually go through and follow it. And this week I did the carving on it, so a little bit of like a tiny little Celtic weave and Trinity, and then I did a scroll on the end, so like what you see on violin scrolls. I did a very small one on the ends of the two arms where the cord attaches, and so that was kind of fun to do a couple of those live. And it's so much easier than people look at it, because most people look at it and think, wow, that's a lot of detail. But on those small ones, they literally take 5 minutes or less to do, and it's just a couple quick steps and it's done. Once you understand the geometry of it, it's like, oh, okay, that's a lot easier than it looks. What else do I have? Oh, I put out a video on comparing freehand dovetail cutting to cutting with guides. I think I talked about that last week, and I started up quite the debate on there. It was like hitting a wasp's nest with a baseball bat.
What was your conclusion?
Oh, my conclusion was they're both great. If you're starting out, a dovetail guide is actually kind of like training wheels. Because you still have to move the saw. It helps you keep that nice straight line, and so it helps your hand learn where the nice straight line is. But once you get going, it's just a little faster not to need it. But it does still ensure really nice, tight, clean joints. So even if there's a time where you're really worried about it and you want them to be absolutely perfect, then that's a great way to go. So I'm for it, but I don't use it. But then there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, no, don't use it. You're not doing hand-cut dovetails if you use a guide. And there's other people like, oh, I would never use it freehand because I can never get a straight line. And there's a balance there.
Not to bring Nike into this, but just do it. Who cares how you do it? Just do it. I don't want to get all political. Isn't that sad that like you can't say anything without being political now? I'm not even trying to be political. But, like, yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, you know, it's try not to get like too much pride involved with how you do things. Just do what you want to do, because nobody else cares. Like you are probably the only person that cares whether you used a jig or not to do something. Nobody else cares. I don't mean that negative. I mean that in like the most positive way possible. Just
yeah.
So looks like we have some questions today.
We do have questions. We have several of them actually. Let's see. Gizanked. I like that name. So I'm trying to remove drawer bottoms from an old drawer, and I'm assuming it's high glue based on the crackle pattern. Can I break this glue joint with just using heat, or should I wet it too? Have you ever done any restoration? Glue removal? Nope.
I have turned away a lot of restoration. The idea of like resurfacing something else it's like the worst part of any job, I would think, and I just don't want to do it. So no. I've been offered and never taken anybody up on that.
I kind of enjoy it. I like seeing the life come back into things. And yeah, different strokes. But yeah, the glue removal. With hide glue, if it is a traditional hide glue, you can simply heat it up. But it takes a lot of heat. You got to get it up to around 200 degrees or so for that to really break loose. Now, if you add a little bit of moisture to it, you can heat it up to 130 or so, and it will break loose. So it's a lot easier to do that. But you have to be careful of how much moisture, because then you might start distorting the wood. What I like to do is actually use a syringe and inject the joint with a tiny bit of moisture, just a bead running along it, and then heat it up with a heat gun. And most of the time I can get loose with that. The problem is if it's a big drawer, if you're heating up one area and you get back around to the other area, then the first area cools off by the time it comes loose. And so there's a little bit of wiggling back and forth with that. But if you can break one area loose and keep it moving while you're breaking the other area loose, then you can slide the whole piece out eventually. But yes, it ends up taking far more heat than you expect. And it is, they say high glue is reversible, and it is, but it takes a lot of work to do it. Now, if it is PVA, You can reverse PVA as well, just using moisture. And you have to use a decent amount of moisture, and you have to let it sit for a while. So it has to soak into the wood. And the same method works for high glue as well. You have to let the PVA or high glue absorb the moisture. And if you keep it on there for long enough, and it's usually like 6 to 12 hours, suddenly it just pops loose. But yeah. We got another question from Sean Sturgis. Stoggs.
Smith.
Sorry, Sean.
Sturgis. I'm guessing it's Sturgis.
Sturgis.
Spelled like Sturgis.
It sounds better. That sounds better than that. What is your scariest moment in the shop?
That's hard.
That's an easy one for me. It was back when I was 12. And I was doing something on one side of the shop, and my dad was doing something on the other side of the shop. And suddenly, the wood work that my dad was doing, he was running a router table, and suddenly the woodwork sounded odd, and then the router shut off. And my dad went, "Ugh!" And he had slipped and hit his hand on the router, and actually took a large chunk out of his finger. And that's why I do hand tools. No, it was just one of those moments, and I was young and informative, and it has stuck with my brain since then. I really haven't had much of any other. I mean, a few nicks and scrapes and slices, but nothing quite like that.
I can't really think of any like truly like scary. Like there's some startling moments. Like I'm always on like high alert whenever I'm using my table saw, and like unscary things can happen, and I'm still like, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
But like there's just the normal stupid stuff. Like my belt grinder, like that thing it doesn't usually hurt, but man, you can really like take pieces of your body off. Oh, I hit my hand with one of those knot cups that you put on like the angle grinders the other day. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really think of any like truly scary. I think actually maybe one of the scariest ones is just like having like grinding and having like something hit my eye and just going like, it didn't hurt, but I'm like, shit. Like, so, and it fortunately nothing happened, but like tell you what, like if you've ever, fortunately nothing was in my eye, but I still like a day or two later, I could feel it. I didn't know if there was something in there or not. So I went to the optometrist and,
scratched the cornea.
Yeah, it was just a scratch. It wasn't a big deal, but let me tell you, like the first thing they do is they sit you down and then they take this big, terrifying torture device looking thing,
probe your eye,
put it like right in your face. And then the guy takes his hands and pulls your eyelids apart. And there's this like super bright light and it's just terrifying. I mean, it looks horrific. I don't know. I have a thing about like things touching my eyes. I can't do it. It's just, like I can't even take eye drops. I have to like drop them in the corner of my eye and let them run over. So
tell me about
just the thought of actually having like, that was bad enough. That was terrifying. I could only imagine having to do that and then have them take sharp tools to my eyeball. Like I would feel like they'd have to gas me or something.
When I was 12, I had a needle puncture my eye. And it ended up having to have 5 stitches on my eye.
Did they drug you? Like, I would say you're going to have to put me out for that because there's no way. Like, my reflexes, like, I could not. I couldn't. They'd have to strap me down. There's no way. It was
not an enjoyable experience. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there's no way. So I guess that's, even though fortunately it didn't turn out bad. I think that's one of the scariest things is having eye damage. So cool. I should probably up my safety glasses game.
Let's move on to a different topic then.
Yes, let's do that. I like that idea.
Where do you find inspiration now after everything you have done already? Theduck. And if anyone doesn't know, Theduck is one of our avid listeners, so thank you for that. Where is your greatest current source of inspiration?
I think for me, it always changes.
Mhm.
I feel like like hundreds of years ago, I would have been an explorer. Like I get bored in the same thing, like doing the same thing. I want to explore and find new territory. And I feel like the learning is like learning and developing new skills for me is the most exciting thing. Like being able
Yeah,
to, it's
yeah.
like resume building, although that, that sounds bad when I put it like that. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think inspiration for me is just seeing something going, oh man, that'd be so cool if I knew how to do that. Or that's interesting. How does this work? So,
I think that's the same for me. Is I am inspired by what I do not know. So I'm regularly looking for things that intrigue me, as in I'd like to play with that. And this actually feeds into the next question we have from JW Craftsman. What's a medium or combination of mediums that you would like to work with that you haven't yet because of lack of tools, accessibility, etc.?
hmm.
I think that feeds very well into the inspiration idea, because one of the things I want to do is stone carving. I've done some metal chasing and engraving. I've done wood carving, and all of those kind of feed into stone carving. But in stone carving, rather than removing a chip or a curl like you would with stone or wood, there you actually blast it out, and so you're actually compressing the rock so that the rock fractures, as opposed to curling it out. And it's a slightly different mindset, and so that really intrigues me to see, can I take the skills that I've learned from engraving and carving and take them into stonework. So one of these days I really want to do a piece that has all three in one, so it has stone carving, wood carving, and engraving. And that idea inspires me, and so I've got this idea rolling through the back of my head of how can I work this into different furniture and different applications. And someday that idea in the back of my brain will pop out in the form
Hmm.
of some art piece. But that's, I think, in a nutshell, how my inspiration works. What about you? What intrigues you?
Um, something that's kind of been like on my to-do list that I haven't made the slightest attempt or effort to learn it yet is stained glass. I feel
Uh,
like that would be really cool, and it's just a you don't see much of it anymore. I mean, it's certainly out there, but that would be something that would be super cool to be able to work into other mediums. I mean, other,
yeah,
furniture or, whatever. You don't see it. So I feel like that's a perfect opportunity to figure out how to combine that into everything else, whether it's, metalwork or woodwork or whatever. And
yeah. That's been
you know,
gone from the scene enough. It's probably retro enough to be cool again.
yeah, yeah. So maybe someday.
I used to do that growing up. My parents actually still have a bunch of stained glass tools.
Hmm. I don't know
And
how
they,
much you need for it. I know Tom Ferrone from Dream Shop Works does a bit of that.
it's kind of like any other skill. You don't need much, but you want a lot.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yep.
I think that about does it for our questions. If you have any question you'd like us to answer, feel free to send it to one of us through Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever way you'd like to contact us. Also, if you want to join us live each Thursday at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 Eastern, you can join us in the live chat, and that's where most of our questions come from. So thank you for all those of you in the live chat. You're helping making this a lot of fun. We're not going to do the creators photo challenge this week because Will is not with us. So we're going to bump that off to next week. So you have one more week to get in your freestyle picture. And what you
There's
have
some
to
good
do
ones.
is, what's that?
There's some good ones up there already.
Yeah, there are some. And I was looking through it last night. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of cool. Gave me a couple ideas. Excuse me. Yeah, so it's freestyle, whatever you want. Try and integrate some of the things that we have talked about recently with leading lines or lighting or other items that make it cool and interesting, and we will judge you next time. uh we have a joke of the week that was just submitted to us live. by the Carbonite Gamorrean. Love that name. What do you call a sleeping bulldog? A bulldozer.
Mm. Oh man,
that one is actually kind of good, and I think it's on the edge of being too good for the podcast.
it's pretty stupid. I think it qualifies. We'll let it slide.
Cool. Well, what are you watching? What's been inspiring you recently?
So I have kind of a weird one, I guess. I guess it's not that weird, but there's a guy. So I order some of my like belt grinding, knife making supply stuff. I order a lot of that through a company called True Grit. It's out
Mhm.
of Canada, or I mean California. I'm sorry. Um, and the guy that runs the shop back there, his name is Jeff Mutz, and he doesn't. So I feel like just over the phone, every time I end up transferred back there talking to the guy, like I end up talking to him for like 20 minutes, and I pick his brain on everything. And he's one of the nicest guys I've ever talked to, and he knows like everything. Any question I have, anything, like he's happy to help. So I talked to him the other day and got his Instagram, and it's just J Mutz, JMUTZ. And I told him, I'm like, hey man, I'm gonna give you a shout out because you're just an awesome guy. So if you guys are into knives, he's a good guy to have on file. Just because I mean, he knows so much. He works for a huge knife supply company. He can tell you about every product made, what his favorites are. That's one of the toughest things I think when you're starting out is that and not just in like knife making or anything, but in anything in general, there's so many different approaches. I mean, for example, I'll talk about, knife sharpening. We'll just talk about that aspect. So, a 2x72 belt, there are probably 150 different belts that you can pick. They have 36 grit, 40 grit, 60 grit, 80 grit, 120, 180, 220, and then they have all of those in aluminum oxide, silicon carbide, ceramic, all these different types of abrasives. And then they make all of those in different weight. You have J weight, X weight, and every single one of them behaves totally differently. Some people use certain grits, some people skip certain grits. So you can literally, I feel like there's no two people in the world that do the same thing. Like
Yes.
there's so many variables to get from A to B that nobody does it the same way. So, you can get online and watch videos and go to forums, and as soon as you find something you like, you'll find something that looks better and it's totally different. So, uh, talking to this guy, it's really nice because I mean, he has direct access to all of these things. He's tried all of them and he's happy to share his knowledge. So if I can talk to somebody who's good and just say, hey, like I just want to steal everything that you've spent 20 years learning. Like, can you just tell me like what's the best way to do it? so um so anyway, if you guys are interested in that sort of stuff, give him a follow. He said he's gonna start posting more of his work on his Instagram. So he's just a good
Cool.
dude.
Let's look
So
him up.
at jmutz MUTZ on Instagram.
Cool. For me, I actually just came across a channel on YouTube, R. Humphrey. He did a Celtic bowl a while ago, and it was an epoxy fill Celtic weave carving bowl that just really caught my attention. He took the bowl blank, and in the bottom of it, he used a router and cut in like an inch and a half deep Celtic weave. And then filled that Celtic weave with epoxy so that when he then put it on the lathe and turned the bowl, the Celtic weave you could see clear through the bottom. And so the weave in the bottom was the clear epoxy in the bottom of the bowl.
So did it go all the way through the bowl?
Yeah, all the way through the bottom.
That's cool because you only ever see it where they like, they'll still have some wood underneath it and it's just like a channel for the epoxy, but having it actually like completely, that's pretty cool. That's a good idea that I have not thought of.
And then on top of that, he undercut the inside of the bowl, so the mouth of the bowl is smaller than the inside of the bowl, and created a flat rim all the way around the top outside. and then on that flat rim, it engraved a Celtic weave. He burnt that into the top of it, and the combination of the burning and the clear epoxy underneath just really it was a fascinating bowl, something slightly different than anything I've seen before, and very intriguing. So definitely worth taking a look at.
Somebody just asked me if I've ever thought about trying to do a tavern puzzle, which I had never heard of, and I just Googled it and
You've never done tavern puzzles?
never even heard of them before.
Also known as blacksmith puzzles?
Huh. No.
Yeah, you should. They're a lot of fun.
I'm looking at them. So do they actually
I've
like
never made one. They're a lot of fun to play with.
they look like puzzles where you like kind of shape challenges where you try and like
Yeah.
it's almost impossible to explain. I mean, are they like active? Do you actually try and like?
Yeah, they're you usually trying to take them apart
so
or
they're
pull a
actually
piece out of it,
solvable?
or yeah.
Okay. Huh. I'll have to look into that. Looks like it would be really frustrating.
And most of them you have to shape them ever so perfectly slightly just to allow the slight movement that needs. So I'm sure they'd be tricky to make.
Huh. Yeah, it looks interesting for sure. I'll have to delve into that.
Well, what's your favorite tool of the week?
What did I write down? I'm gonna go with the so that little vacuum kit that I got for my wood stabilizing stuff that I used on that video. From Best Value Vax is where I got it. Are you? Oh, okay, you highlight. Okay, so yeah, it's if you guys watched that recent video that I put out on the wood stabilizing, literally rotten spalted oak that's been sitting in my backyard forever, super soft and worthless. And anyway, so I bake it and stabilize it, and then yeah, so that's the kit that I use. It's just a vacuum pump and a chamber. So that's my
A lot
pick.
of fun. I actually just made a new chamber for my vacuum pump this week because I needed to do longer handles. So I
What
made
are you making?
The handles for mallets.
Oh, cool.
So I had some that I just wanted to. I was actually experimenting with difference between using penetrating epoxy and using a cactus juice. So that was kind of a
See this could be like the next glue test. I feel like if you did like mallet hammerhead, I feel like that would be a good thing to do. I guess, for lack of a yeah. Is it adds a ton of density and it just keeps stuff together. I mean, you see like a lot of the old mallets where the end grain starts splitting on the end. I feel like the stabilizing stuff would help prevent a lot of that.
Yeah.
It'd give it some more mass.
Plus, you can use some of the really cool spalted stuff that you probably don't want to use for regular mallet.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, my tool of the week is an old-fashioned oil can. You know, those little ones with the pump button on the bottom. I use 3-in-1 oil all throughout the shop on all my hand tools and main moving part and little bits here and there. But I just always feel bad with that little plastic bottle of 3-in-1 oil. So I dump it out of that and do an old oil can. I feel so much better about myself.
So I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but like I think the 3-in-1, and it has like this new and improved tip that defies gravity or whatever. Here's the catch. It only works when the thing is pointing up. Isn't that it's like it solves it attempts to solve a problem and it creates a way worse one. So like
there's like a straw going down to the bottom of the container.
If I turn it like to where you would with any other container, to where you actually want to drip out of the tip of it, it doesn't work. So I have to like have it pointing up, squeeze it until stuff comes out the top, and then flip it over. It's the dumbest. It's the worst. It's terrible. Am I doing a good job of explaining that?
Sounds like it. Yeah.
So like, yeah, you can't, the way you would normally use any other, liquid applicator known to man, it doesn't work that way. You have to like drip it down on itself and then turn it over. It's terrible.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Joe Pierce just brought up in the chat, one of the other reasons why I like the old cans is that they don't tip over. They just sit on your bench because all the weight is at the bottom and it's got a big flat surface on the bottom.
Yeah.
And so even if they do tip over, it's the way that they're designed, they don't leak. So it's just a cool system, and it feels good.
What about the ones that the cans that had like the spout off to the side, like
the little thumb pump?
Yeah, with the little thumb pump.
Yeah, those are too big for what because like that tiny little canister, because mine is like 1.5 inches in diameter by like 3/4 inch tall, and that amount of oil lasts me for a year or two.
Huh.
So I don't need a big can.
Oh, I just found it. It's called a spout oiler. Same company makes them. But yeah, that does hold way more than necessary.
So I have like 3 ounces in mine, if that.
I just added the same one that you used to my shopping cart.
Cool. Well, I think that about does it for this week. This has been surprisingly good. We might have to kick Will out more often. So I hope you like the shorter content. We're not wasting as much of your week this week as normal. And if you do or don't like it, let us know. Also, if you want to join us live, you can do that each Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You can go to YouTube at the Creators Collective channel and join us there. We are looking forward to seeing you. And I do want to say a huge thank you to our patrons on Patreon, particularly to Darren Mates, Caleb Harris of You Can Make This Too, and John from John Made It. You're helping make this channel better. So thank you for that. I think that about does it. Until next time, have a wonderful day.
See you later, guys.